With me is Faith Lumonya right here from SEATINI. How are you, Faith?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you, Marjorie?
Good, good. All right. Let's begin this discussion, of course, by throwing some light on what is the necessity, or even before we go to that, let's break down what gender responsiveness is.
So when we talk about gender responsiveness, because the whole issue around gender is basically about women, men, but also youth. And so when you're discussing gender responsiveness, it's basically about looking at those groups within that demographic that are marginalized compared to the other groups. So for example, when you look at whether it's men or women, it's the dynamics of society and all the different the way that we live, women are largely marginalized. And we talk about, for example, issues to do with unpaid care work, that the burden of unpaid care work in a home falls on a woman. And even when you find a situation where the man is willing to support the woman, there's still a certain kind of responsibility that lies on the woman, because then she's the one, because as women we are literally like the managers. The men are the ones who they do the policy. So a man will say, I want food to be served at this time. That's the policy.
Then we implement.
But the woman is the one. Actually, there is someone who said that the man is like the chairman. He makes the policies, and then the woman is the CEO of the home. She's the one who implements. So because of all those dynamics, you find that society and the whole situation of how life happens is that the woman then is more burdened. And then when you look at so we are looking at, for example, now when you look at the youth, again, for example, issues to do with access to resources, you find that adults easily access resources, and the youth, it's much harder for you to access. So gender is basically, when we talk about gender responsiveness, when you talk about gender equality, it's about empowering those people within that demographic that are a bit more marginalized
in that aspect.
A lot of discussion has been ongoing about the need for a stimulus package, and so government came in and proposed some issues, some strategies as part of the stimulus package. So for example, issues to do with providing finance through the Uganda Development Bank, issues to do with certain reforms that have been undertaken within the tax regime, and that's something again I will talk about, because while the proposals were made by Ministry of Finance, they have not yet been operational. And then so there was issues to do with finance, and then there were issues to do with the whole tax. But one of the reasons why we have now started a conversation around gender responsiveness is because when you look at the businesses, the nature of the businesses, you find that women, in fact in Uganda, 38% of the registered businesses are owned by women. But again, 62% of those businesses are of the micro and small enterprises owned by women are informal. So 62% of the informal micro and small enterprises are owned by women. Now, when we say informal, so many times people think these are illegal businesses, but they are not illegal businesses. They are actually legal. Some could be registered, some may not be registered. Some could be paying taxes, some may not be paying taxes, because also when you, within the context of micro and small, there is the tax regime of the presumptive tax. So, and there, the presumptive tax regime, the assumption is that these are businesses that are not really tax compliant. They pay once in a while, yeah. So those are the kind of businesses that women own. But again, these are the businesses that employ the majority of Ugandans, and we are looking at an estimation of, because Private Sector Foundation has put it at 90%. 90% of the private sector is small and medium enterprises, but in terms of employment, they employ up to 2.5 million Ugandans and more. Now, when you look at those statistics, you then it's important also assess the impact, because the extent of the impact then influences the design of the stimulus package. And one of the challenges that businesses, the women-owned businesses face is that most of the women-owned businesses are businesses that rely on you directly interacting with the consumer. So we are looking at
interfacing with them.
Exactly. So we are looking at the retail. If I have a retail shop, say for example, I have a shop where I am selling beauty products, or I am selling merchandise, sugar. I have to interact.
Household items.
Exactly. I have to interact with the consumer. And then if it's a salon for beauty, if it's makeup, if it's hair, and then when it comes to hospitality, when it comes to childcare, most of the daycare centers are actually owned and run by women. But also a lot of the women again are involved in like light manufacturing, light processing. So for example, I'm making juice, I'm making candles, I'm making crafts.
Liquid soap.
I'm making, yes. So then and because of the nature of the product and the amount of financing that you're putting in, because again, when you look at the at women businesses, majority of them invest using their own financing, and statistics has put it at about 71%. 71% of people who have set up micro and small enterprises actually use their own financing, and only about 8% will use other financing. So for example, from loans, and now this I'm talking about startup. If I am starting out, I'll either get my own savings or I'll get money from a family member. And then it's just a few who will say, I'm going to go to a financial institution and get money for startup. So so even when it comes to cost, for example, cost of marketing your product, again, the costs are often limited. So for example, you will find a woman who is making and selling candles, or making and selling juice, and she will sell through interactions. So if there is a meeting, a gathering somewhere, we know about Mothers Union and how they constantly meet. So it's through those avenues that they sell their products or they market their products. But also, again, there are those women entrepreneurs who relied a lot on schools for their markets. Schools and then hotels, because when it comes to supplying, for example, through a supermarket, if you're going to sell your products to a supermarket, you have to supply and then wait to be paid back. So you have to supply on credit. Now, if you have products worth 500,000 and you're giving them to a supermarket and they'll take about 2 months to pay you back, it means your business doesn't have cash flow. So you can't be able to continue operating. Now, that's the way supermarkets operate. And it's also, and this is something that needs to also be looked into when it comes to the whole import substitution discussion. But that's something that will be a discussion for another day. So the way women sell their products, and then now comes in COVID-19. and demands for social distancing. It just completely disrupts the whole the way business is done, because then that means I can't directly, because as women we are social beings, and I will talk about my product and then you will buy it. But now people have had to shift to online marketing. So through online marketing, you put out your product, and a lot of women are not very, a lot of the micro and small enterprise owners, the women, are not very,
they're not so fast
with technology. Exactly. So it has become a challenge for them to be able to quickly adapt. But also, aside from now access to markets, because there is the issue of access to markets, but then there is the other one of access to finance. Women have often relied a lot on circles, and it's no wonder that when it came to the stimulus package, again, money is being driven through circles, through Emyoga. But we need to take that into consideration, and that's why the whole discussion of gender responsiveness comes in is very important, because then it looks into the social dynamics, and it questions whether the way society has evolved will be able to support certain policy proposals that are being put forward in terms of their implementation. Now, because with the demand for social distancing, and yet initially circles relied on constantly meeting and being able to take account, so and so you are given money, you have paid so much, so and so you have the capacity to request for such amounts of money. That whole arrangement has been distorted by the social distancing demands and even the lockdown, and so then access to finance becomes very challenging. Women also relied on microfinance institutions for financing, because these ones offer a very low interest rate, but also they allow low value capital, unlike the other financial, the banks, for example, the commercial banks, which demand for very high value collateral. And so and we know the statistics of how many women own land in Uganda. Sure. So it becomes very challenging in terms of access to finance. One of the things that we have from the different research that we do, one of the things that we found is that a lot of microfinance institutions have experienced a 90% reduction in deposits that they receive.
In this period?
In this period. So you'll find a microfinance institution, and I won't say the name of this institution, but it works in Hoima, Masindi, Fort Portal, that region. Now, this financial institution was receiving about 1 billion in deposits every month. When it came to the after the lockdown, during the lockdown and then after, within this period, this amount has reduced to as low as 1 million per month. That's a 90%, more than 90% reduction. So that means women who relied on microfinance institutions to access loans or to access financing for their businesses now cannot be able to effectively access the money because it's not there. And so that is why it's important that one of the considerations that was given was that money should be taken through some microfinance institutions. Although again, for us, from the way that we see it and the emphasis around the stimulus package, most of the focus has been on Uganda Development Bank. Now, Uganda Development Bank limits its financing to only small and medium enterprises and above. So then that means the micro, where the women fall, cannot be able to access this financing. And but also it demands for certain collateral. So for example, certain kind of assets, but also it has certain specific financing mechanisms that it provides. So for example, asset financing, and then with asset financing you must be able you should be able to contribute about, I think, 30% of the total value. So it becomes really challenging for certain women entrepreneurs to access this financing, and for us that's why we think that government needs to get back and look into the package and redesign it to ensure that the majority of those that are supposed to benefit from this package can be able to benefit, because a lot of businesses have been affected. We've seen a 50% reduction in sales because you're not receiving as much demand. There are entrepreneurs who are limited to only selling in bulk. So for example, entrepreneurs who make packaging materials, they are limited to only selling in bulk, but now they have had to readjust and start to sell depending on how much the buyer wishes to buy.
All right.
I think one of the things that needs to be done again is capacity building. Because so we know that a lot of effort has been made, and actually within the Ministry of Finance, for budgets to be approved, for different sector budgets to be approved, you need to indicate the issue of gender, how gender responsive your actions are going to be. And so they are even given, there is an assessment that is done, and then they are given some kind of certificate to actually show that that the actions that you're going to undertake are going to be gender responsive. But again, we see that a lot of decisions are taken without doing such assessments, because it's one thing to say that so many women will be targeted, like in terms of participation, because we know that, for example, within the parliament we have women representation.
Yeah, we do.
So it's one thing to have women representation. It's one thing for you to have a training where you have more women. It's another thing for you to sit down and assess and analyze the effects of the different programs you're putting in place on women. So, and that then requires that you fully understand what their situation is, how they have been affected, and then design programs that directly would benefit them. I said I would talk about the issue of the tax deferrals. Now, one of the things that we asked for when it came to the stimulus package was that the government should offer relief, tax relief. Tax relief is basically that you will not be required to pay, you operate. But there are dynamics within the investment policy regimes that then affect the way in which government can say, okay, they are going to design policies and programs that target only the domestic entrepreneurs without the foreign investors raising concern.
Okay.
So because of that, government has limited its policy space to be able to support local entrepreneurs. Because in this circumstance, for example, government would have been able to design a stimulus package that specifically targets small entrepreneurs, and then even get down to, that specifically targets local entrepreneurs, domestic entrepreneurs, and then even get down to say, okay, now among the domestic entrepreneurs, they are the women entrepreneurs. So then specifically design strategies that target them. But because government has lost that policy space, and this is policy space that needs to be regained, if we are to ensure that the import substitution strategy, for example, will work, but now they have shrunk their policy space to an extent that they cannot be able to provide certain incentives to locals without extending the same to foreign. So that's why the issue of tax relief was practically not going to work. So they provided for a tax deferral. Now, so the tax deferral was basically for the period of April, May, June, and they said that they would allow for people to start paying, for businesses to start paying in September. So they were allowing until September people were supposed to start paying, but the challenge is that the deferral period only covered the 3 months, and so assumed that the impacts were on the 3 months of April, May, June, but the impact have been felt until today. But again, the other challenge with that is that for that to come into force, Parliament of Uganda must pass the tax the act that operationalizes the deferral to happen, and that's the tax procedures bill, which hasn't been passed. One of the stimulus packages that has really been discussed has been the issue of the tax deferrals, and so it basically means that they are allowing entrepreneurs or business people not to pay income tax, which is corporation tax, or presumptive tax, depending on which bracket you fall, and then pay as you earn for the period of April, May, June. And the proposal was that such businesses would start paying come September, which is this month. But what shocks us is that this particular stimulus package has not been operationalized, because we have a lot of businesses, a lot of entrepreneurs who have already received notifications from the Uganda Revenue Authority demanding for payment of those taxes, but also even including the interests and the penalties for delay in payment. And yet also, in addition to the deferrals, there was an indication that the penalties and interests would be waived. So now entrepreneurs have fallen into panic because for them, according to the package that was read out by the Minister of Finance, for them, they knew that wasn't something that they had to factor into their expenses. Now, why this is so is because the Parliament of Uganda, our members of Parliament, have not prioritized passing the Tax Procedures Bill 2020. And so maybe because they are busy either dealing with COVID-19, although we know that we have a task force, or they are busy in elections. But this is something that needs to be urgently taken into account, and we are hoping that everyone who is listening to this conversation that we're having here, that when a running member of parliament comes to you for votes, you need to highlight this concern to them, because unless the act is passed, URA cannot be able to operationalize this, because for them they rely on a legal framework to implement a certain directive by government. So that's the situation that we are in. And so the Uganda Revenue Authority has advised, some officers have advised the entrepreneurs to go ahead and pay the tax revenue that is for that period, and then when the law is passed, then it can be treated as credits, like a tax credit. Yeah. But entrepreneurs, micro, small, and medium-sized entrepreneurs do not have that financing, that money that is just there to. When you indicate an opportunity for them not to incur a certain expense, it's an opportunity for them to reinvest their money into their businesses. A lot of them have had to reduce on their on their staff. And yet again there are changes that have been made, that if, for example, you are selling, what would they call it, that if you are operating in such a way that people are coming to you to buy products, now you have to get into delivering. Yes. So you need extra labor, extra labor. But again, we are in a situation where people need to cut down on labor to be able to minimize their expenses. So that's the dynamic. But just to also speak to the issue of the way business has changed, that instead of now having to, of me as a consumer, having to come to the entrepreneur and buy their products, they are now relying on deliveries. Now, deliveries are mostly done by men. And so even when it comes to the way business is changing, again, you see that women are increasingly losing out.
The delivery thing needs someone aggressive. They're up and there, and for the women,
it may not be about aggressiveness, because I know we have women who are aggressive, but the way that particular part of the value chain is designed, for some reason, it has been left for men. So it's the men who are manning the tractor, the trucks. It's the men who are operating all these different delivery services.
Even the borders that deliver groceries these days.
Exactly.
It's unlikely you'll find a woman riding that one.
Thank you very much. And that's a perfect example, because a lot of businesses have resorted to that. So either the cost is increasing on a woman, or she's losing out on an opportunity. So it's that's one of the reasons why, yes, we agree with the idea of deferring the tax, although again there are questions of how it will be implemented. So if I am deferring payment of tax for, say, 3 to 6 months, it's an accumulated expense. How am I going to pay for it? Am I going to be allowed to pay in installments? And if it's in installments, for how long? And also, if it's in installments, how many installments will they be? So there are all those different dynamics. But also, given the way business is moving, is it realistic to maintain the rates as they are? But also, with the way business is moving, that sales have reduced, that the certain costs of production are still high or increasing. So, for example, transport costs have really increased. Will these entrepreneurs actually be able to pay up that tax revenue that has been deferred to later? Things don't seem to be getting better. But also another one that we agree to is the issue of providing finance through the circles, although again there are challenges, like I said, with regard to accessing that money. So maybe it would be more relevant to channel it again through microfinance institutions, but again cap the interest to ensure that the interest is not so high, but also these different conditions. Because certain entrepreneurs have said, okay, I do not have land, I do not have a vehicle, I do not have certain kind of machinery or a certain specific asset to put in as collateral, but I have this arrangement with certain supermarkets. I have this arrangement with certain large buyers. Can I give that in as some kind of paperwork for me to be able to access the financing available? So a lot of adjustments need to be made to ensure that people can access funding. Okay. And then another issue that for us we think would work is the issue of cash transfers. So the government of Uganda has tried through the SAGE program for the elderly, but also if cash can also be transferred to certain entrepreneurs, it would also help, because cash is the blood life of any business. So you need to be able to have that kind of financing, and then government procurements. And one of the things that has been really disheartening is the way government handled the whole issue of masks, because most of the women who are either doing tailoring, like making clothes, or who are or who are involved in making crafts, because most of the women involved in making crafts were relying on tourists coming in. So a tourist comes, they come and they will visit. So for example, here on Buganda Road, most of the suppliers of the village markets on Buganda Road, I think it's called Village Market, the one that sells crafts. Yeah. Most of the suppliers are women. Now, with tourists not coming in as much, that's a market that has been lost. So a lot of women have resorted to making masks, but they now have to sell them either through friends, through relatives, if you have a connection here and there. But government procurement would have been an opportunity for them to sell their masks. But government went ahead and gave this particular tender to a large enterprise. Yes, and then lastly is to do with standard operating procedures. There are certain standard operating procedures that have been put in place. So, for example, the issue of masks, the issue of sanitizer, the social distancing that you need to increase, standard operating procedures that require that you even increase people that operate in the shop in a certain space. So, for if you need to continue operating in the same way, it means that you have to hire bigger space. You have to rent bigger premises. Now, that means it's an additional cost to the business. So one of the things that we are proposing in terms of the whole gender responsive strategy is that support needs to be given to when it comes to the standard operating procedures. And fine, government has made an effort to supply certain masks, although they are really poor quality, some of them. But also they have also so it's basically been about masks, but issues to do with sanitizer. This is something that government should be able to support for certain entrepreneurs, so that they can be compliant, but also so that the cost can really be reduced. So in terms of the recommendations, one of the things that we are looking at is government procurement. Government needs to redirect or rethink the way that they are doing some of these things,
and
because
put all these factors into consideration.
exactly. So because, for example, when you look at the way they handled masks, a lot of entrepreneurs who are making crafts have now moved to making to making masks, and then those that were making beverages have moved to making sanitizer.
Taking
now,
advantage of the available market.
Exactly. So now what government needs to do is to redirect the way that they are doing all this procurement, the procurement that they are doing, that they should be procuring such items from women entrepreneurs. They should be procuring them from micro, small and medium enterprises, as opposed to giving a tender to a large entrepreneur. And we know that there are issues to do with standards, but I mean the standards for masks, for example, are very clear. They were clearly highlighted by the World Health Organization. So that is something that is easy to monitor.
Yeah.
And so for us, our thinking is that government is the largest buyer in any country, so it's important that they give priority to some of these women entrepreneurs. But also issues to do with sanitizer. We have a lot of women entrepreneurs that we work with who have moved from making beverages to making sanitizer, and they have even gotten their product standardized. So it's important that priority is given to such people, because given the fact that they have limited capacity in terms of accessing information about where market opportunities are, accessing information, or even easily taking advantage of the technology that's available to market their products. So it's important that government looks into that. And then the other is issues to do with cash transfers. And this, for a business and for an entrepreneur, it ties in with the provision of credit. And one of the things that we have been saying is that given the market dynamics, given the situation as it is, that sales are low, that costs of production are have remained high or are actually increasing, because, like, for example, transport costs have really increased. And yet now people have had to move into delivering. So the cost of production is really high, and so it would be more relevant if interest-free loans are provided for some of these entrepreneurs. And the women, the associations exist. So, for example, the Uganda Women Entrepreneurs Association, and then there is the Uganda Small Scale Industries Association. All these associations have women who they work with, or who they support, or who are members. So it's very easy to actually get these women. So issues to do with interest-free loans is very critical. And then lastly, operationalizing the whole tax deferrals that were proposed.